I never thought I'd be the kind of person to cause a scene at a billionaire's wedding. But when security tried to throw Marcus out, my Marcus, something inside me snapped. Let me tell you exactly what happened that night. Because even now, months later, I still wake up replaying every moment. The truth is, that wedding changed everything. Not just for us, but for how I see myself. How I understand what it means to stand up for someone you love. This is the story of the night I had to call the police on one of the most powerful families in the country, and why I'd do it all over again. Before that night, my life looked pretty straightforward from the outside. I was 34 years old, living in Manhattan, working as a senior architect at one of those firms where everyone wears expensive suits and pretends coffee doesn't cost $8. I'd spent the last decade building what I thought was the perfect life. I had the apartment in Chelsea, the gym membership I actually used, the circle of college friends who still met for drinks every Thursday. I'd dated women throughout my 20s, had 2 serious relationships that fizzled out for reasons I could never quite articulate. My parents in Connecticut were waiting patiently for grandchildren. My older sister already had 3 kids and kept asking when I'd settle down. Everyone assumed I was just picky, just focused on my career. Hell, I assumed that too. I met Jonathan Ashford in college. We were both architecture students, both ambitious, both desperate to prove ourselves. He came from old money, the kind of family that has buildings named after them, that gets mentioned in the society pages. But John never acted like it mattered. We became best friends, stayed close even as our careers took different paths. He went into real estate development, taking over parts of his family's empire. I stayed in design. We'd grab lunch once a month, text about basketball games, show up for each other's birthdays. When he got engaged to Catherine 2 years ago, he asked me to be his best man. I said yes, without hesitation. The wedding was planned for a private estate in the Hamptons. Not just any estate, the Ashford Summer Compound, 40 acres of manicured lawns and old-growth trees, with a main house that looked like it belonged in a European castle. The invitation alone probably cost more than my monthly rent. It was going to be the event of the season, 300 guests, everyone who was anyone. I was honored to be part of it, excited for my friend, ready to give a toast that would make people laugh and maybe cry a little. Then I met Marcus. It was 6 months before the wedding. I'd gone to a new gym in Brooklyn, one of those places that focuses on functional training instead of just machines and mirrors. Marcus was one of the trainers there. He was 38, with dark hair starting to gray at the temples, arms that showed he practiced what he preached, and this way of looking at you like he was actually listening, not just waiting for his turn to talk. He had a scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood accident, and his hands were calloused from years of working with weights. He wasn't perfect. He was real. Our first conversation was about my posture. He noticed I was compensating for an old shoulder injury, adjusted my form on a deadlift, explained the biomechanics in a way that made sense. We started talking between sets. He mentioned he'd been a Marine, had served 2 tours overseas before getting out and becoming a trainer. He had a daughter from a previous relationship, showed me a picture of a gap-toothed 7-year-old named Sophie who lived with her mom in New Jersey. He saw her every other weekend, talked about her like she was the center of his universe. I started scheduling my workouts when I knew he'd be working. Told myself it was because he was a good trainer, because I was finally seeing real progress. I'd catch myself watching him demonstrate exercises, noticing the way his shirt pulled across his shoulders, the concentration on his face when he was explaining something. I'd go home and lie awake thinking about the way he'd touched my arm to correct my position. Professional and brief, but somehow it would replay in my mind for hours. This wasn't admiration. This wasn't just appreciating someone's expertise. But I kept pushing the thoughts away, kept telling myself I was reading too much into a professional relationship. I'd been attracted to women my whole life. I had a type. I knew what desire felt like. This was something else. It had to be. Then one night, 3 months before the wedding, Marcus asked if I wanted to grab a beer after the gym closed. Just casual, 2 guys getting a drink. We ended up at a dive bar in Brooklyn, the kind of place with peanut shells on the floor and a jukebox that only played songs from before 2000. We talked for 4 hours, about his time in the military, about losing friends overseas, about how hard it was to adjust to civilian life, about my work, my family, My fear that I was designing buildings but not really building anything that mattered. About his daughter, about my sister's kids, about getting older and wondering what it all meant. At some point, our knees touched under the table. Neither of us moved away. The conversation continued, but I became very aware of that point of contact, of the warmth radiating from where we were connected. My throat felt dry. I noticed I was leaning forward, that the space between us had somehow gotten smaller. When we left the bar, he walked me to the subway. We stood on the corner, and there was this moment where neither of us moved. The street was empty, just the distant sound of traffic and the hum of the city at night. He looked at me, and I saw something in his expression that made my chest tight. Not pity, not confusion, recognition. He said my name quietly, just my name. And I knew if I didn't leave right then, something was going to shift that I couldn't shift back. I went down into the subway, sat on the train with my heart doing something irregular, my hands gripping my knees. Went home and stood in my apartment staring at nothing. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about the way he'd said my name, about the weight of his knee against mine, about the fact that I hadn't wanted to leave. I avoided the gym for a week. Told myself I was busy with work, which was true. Told myself I needed to focus on the wedding preparations, which was also true. But really I was terrified. Terrified of what I'd felt. Terrified of what it meant. When I finally went back, Marcus didn't ask where I'd been. He just smiled, asked if I was ready to work, and we fell back into our routine. Except now everything felt different. Every correction of my form, every casual touch, every moment our eyes met, it all carried this charge I couldn't ignore. I started comparing how I felt around Marcus to how I'd felt in my past relationships. With Sarah, my girlfriend in my late 20s, everything had been comfortable, easy, but never urgent. I'd loved her, but I'd never felt this pull, this magnetic need to be near someone. With Jennifer, my last serious relationship, the sex had been fine, good even, but I'd never lost sleep thinking about the curve of her shoulder or the sound of her laugh. This was different. This was consuming. 2 months before the wedding, Marcus asked me to dinner. Not a beer after work. Dinner. A real restaurant. The kind with tablecloths and wine lists. I said yes before I could think about it. We met on a Friday night at a small Italian place in the West Village. Candles on the tables, soft music, couples around us holding hands. We talked about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up in a military family, moving every few years, never quite feeling like he belonged anywhere. I told him about the pressure of being the son who was supposed to have it all figured out, about my father's expectations, about feeling like I was playing a role I'd been assigned. The conversation felt like peeling back layers, getting to something true underneath. After dinner we walked. Just walked through the village, past brownstones with lit windows, past late-night cafes and closed bookstores. We ended up at a small park, sitting on a bench. It was late April, still cool enough that I could see my breath. Marcus turned to me and said he needed to tell me something. His voice was steady but quiet. He said he was attracted to me, that he had been for months, that he understood if that made things complicated, if I needed space, but he couldn't keep pretending he didn't feel it. I sat there, frozen. Every defense I'd built up, every rationalization, every excuse, they all crumbled, because hearing him say it out loud made me realize I felt exactly the same way. I told him I'd never been with a man, that I'd always thought I was straight, that I didn't know what I was doing or what this meant. My hands were shaking. I couldn't look at him. He reached over and took my hand, just held it. His palm was warm, rough with calluses. He said we didn't have to figure it all out tonight, that there was no rush, that whatever I was feeling was okay. I looked at him then, really looked at him, saw the vulnerability in his expression, the fear mixed with hope. And I thought about how much courage it must have taken to say what he'd said, knowing I might walk away, might reject him, might make everything awkward and impossible. I kissed him, right there on that bench in a park in the West Village. It wasn't smooth or practiced. I had no idea what I was doing, but the moment our lips touched, something in me relaxed, like a muscle I'd been tensing for years finally let go. When we pulled apart, I was crying. Not sad tears, something else. Relief, maybe. Recognition, like I'd been holding my breath underwater and finally surfaced. We started seeing each other after that, quietly at first. I wasn't ready to tell anyone, wasn't ready to explain something I barely understood myself. Marcus was patient. He'd been out since his 20s, had navigated all of this already. He didn't push me, didn't demand declarations or labels. We'd meet at his apartment in Brooklyn, cook dinner together, watch movies on his worn couch. He'd tell me stories about Sophie, show me drawings she'd made. We'd fall asleep tangled together, and I'd wake up feeling more at peace than I ever had. But I was also terrified. I'd lie awake while Marcus slept, thinking about my family, my friends, my career, thinking about Jonathan's wedding, where I was supposed to give a toast as the straight best friend, the reliable one, the one who had his life together. How could I explain this? How could I tell people that at 34, I'd discovered something fundamental about myself that changed everything? The wedding was 6 weeks away when I finally told Marcus about it. We were in his kitchen, making pasta, and he asked what I was stressed about. I'd been quiet all evening, distracted. So I told him about Jonathan, about the wedding, about being the best man, about how I'd been invited to bring a +1 but had RSVP'd solo months ago before I'd met Marcus, before any of this. Marcus nodded, kept stirring the sauce. He said he understood, that it was complicated, that he didn't expect me to bring him, to introduce him as my boyfriend, to come out to everyone at once. His voice was even, but I could hear the hurt underneath. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that I wanted him there, that I was proud to be with him, but the words stuck in my throat, because I was scared. Scared of my parents' reaction, of Jonathan's wealthy, conservative family, of being judged, of becoming the story people whispered about. We didn't talk about it again. The weeks passed. I went to the bachelor party, smiled through the toasts, pretended everything was normal. Went to the rehearsal dinner, gave a preview of my speech, accepted congratulations on how well I'd done. All the while, I felt like I was splitting in two, the person everyone thought I was, and the person I was becoming. 3 days before the wedding, Marcus and I had a fight. Not a big one, not dramatic, but he said he felt like I was ashamed of him, of us. I said that wasn't true, that I just needed time. He said he'd given me time, that he understood coming out was hard, but that he couldn't be someone's secret forever, that he'd been there before, and it had nearly destroyed him. I didn't know what to say, because he was right. I was asking him to be invisible, to not exist in this huge part of my life, and that wasn't fair. We didn't break up, but something shifted. I left his apartment that night feeling like I was losing something precious, something I'd been lucky to find. The morning of the wedding, I woke up in my hotel room in the Hamptons feeling sick. Not physically, something deeper. I put on my tuxedo, fixed my tie, looked at myself in the mirror, saw someone playing a part, someone hiding. I thought about Marcus, about the way he looked at me, the way he made me laugh, the way he listened when I talked about my dreams and fears, about how he'd shown me a version of myself I'd never known existed, someone braver, more honest, more alive. I picked up my phone, texted him before I could overthink it, asked if he wanted to come to the wedding, as my date, as my boyfriend. He called immediately, asked if I was sure. I said yes, said I should have asked weeks ago, said I wanted him there, wanted everyone to know, wanted to stop hiding. There was a long pause. Then he said he'd be there, that he'd rent a tux, drive out to the Hamptons, meet me at the estate, that he was proud of me. I felt something loosen in my chest. Fear, yes, but also excitement, relief, like I was finally doing something true. The ceremony was at 4 p.m. I stood up front with Jonathan, watched him marry Catherine under an arch of white roses, smiled through the vows and the kiss and the applause. The whole time I kept scanning the crowd, looking for Marcus. He'd texted that he was running late, that traffic was bad, that he'd be there for the reception. The cocktail hour was on the lawn, waiters circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, string quartet playing Vivaldi. I made small talk with relatives, with Jonathan's business partners, with people I'd met once at some dinner party years ago. Everyone asked about my life, my work, whether I was seeing anyone. I said I was, said I'd brought someone, felt my heart racing every time. Then I saw him, Marcus, walking across the lawn in a rented tux that fit him perfectly, looking nervous and determined and beautiful. I excused myself from a conversation I wasn't listening to anyway and went to meet him. He smiled when he saw me. this small, uncertain smile. I took his hand right there in front of everyone. Didn't care who saw. Led him toward the bar. That's when the security guard approached us. Young guy, early 20s, with an earpiece and a clipboard. He asked Marcus for his name, said he needed to check him against the guest list. Marcus gave his name. The guard frowned, scrolled through his tablet, shook his head, said Marcus wasn't on the list, that this was a private event, that he'd have to leave. I explained that Marcus was my +1, that I'd RSVP'd for 2 people. The guard said the RSVP had me listed as attending solo, that all the place cards had been printed, that they couldn't accommodate unexpected guests. His tone was polite but firm, non-negotiable. Marcus started to say he'd leave, that it was fine, that he didn't want to cause problems. But I saw something in the guard's expression, not just professional courtesy, something else. Distaste, judgment. He was looking at our joined hands like they were something dirty. I felt heat rise in my chest, asked to speak to whoever was in charge. The guard said that wasn't possible, that the family had strict instructions about security, that uninvited guests needed to leave immediately or they'd call the police. Other guests were starting to notice. Conversations pausing, heads turning. I saw Jonathan's mother across the lawn, watching with narrowed eyes. Saw some of Jonathan's college friends whispering. I told the guard that I was the best man, that I'd been Jonathan's friend for 15 years, that there had clearly been some mistake with the RSVP. The guard said it didn't matter, that he had his orders. Marcus squeezed my hand, said quietly that we should go, that it wasn't worth it. But I looked at him and saw the resignation in his expression, the familiar hurt of being excluded, of being treated like he didn't belong. And I thought about all the times he'd probably experienced this, all the times he'd been made to feel less than, unwelcome, wrong. I thought about the conversation we'd had in his kitchen, about being someone's secret, about how I'd asked him to come here to be visible, to stand beside me. And now someone was trying to throw him out like he was nothing. Something crystallized in that moment. A choice. I could let Marcus leave, could smooth things over, could go back to the reception and give my toast and pretend everything was fine. Or I could stand up, could make this mean something. I told the guard that Marcus was staying, that if there was a problem with the guest list, we'd sort it out with Jonathan directly. The guard said that wasn't going to happen, that the family had made it clear this was a controlled event, that they couldn't have random people wandering around. Random people. Like Marcus was some stranger who'd wandered in off the street. Not the man I loved. Not someone who'd driven 2 hours to be here because I'd asked him to. I pulled out my phone. The guard asked what I was doing. I said I was calling the police, that if he was going to threaten us with law enforcement, I wanted them here to explain exactly what law Marcus was breaking by attending a wedding as my invited guest. The guard looked stunned. Said I was being ridiculous, that I was going to embarrass myself and my friend. I said I didn't care. Dialed 911. The operator answered. I explained the situation as calmly as I could. Said I was at a private event where security was trying to forcibly remove my guest despite him being invited. That I wanted an officer present to ensure no one's rights were violated. The operator said she'd send someone, asked me to stay on the line. By now, we'd attracted a full audience. 50 people at least, watching this unfold. I saw Jonathan pushing through the crowd, his face confused and concerned. Catherine was behind him, her wedding dress trailing on the grass. Jonathan reached us, asked what was happening. I explained about the RSVP, about Marcus, about the guard's refusal to let him stay. Jonathan looked at Marcus, then at me, and I saw the moment he understood, really understood. His expression shifted, surprise, realization, something I couldn't quite read. He turned to the guard, said there had been a mistake, that Marcus was welcome, that he should be added to the guest list immediately. The guard hesitated, said he'd have to check with Mrs. Ashford. Jonathan's voice went cold, said he was the groom, that this was his wedding, that he was telling the guard what to do. Mrs. Ashford appeared then, Jonathan's mother, in a silver gown that probably cost more than my car. She asked what the disturbance was. The guard started to explain. She cut him off, looked at Marcus with barely concealed disgust, turned to me and said this was highly inappropriate, that I should have informed them I'd be bringing a guest, that they couldn't simply accommodate last-minute changes. I said I had RSVP'd for a +1 months ago. She said the card had been returned with just my name. I realized then what had happened. I'd filled out the RSVP before I'd met Marcus, had checked the box for attending solo. There was no mistake. This was my own doing. But that didn't change what was happening now. Mrs. Ashford was looking at Marcus like he was an intruder, like his presence was somehow offensive, and I knew it wasn't about the guest list. It was about what we represented. Two men, holding hands, refusing to be invisible. I heard sirens in the distance. Mrs. Ashford's expression tightened. She said I was making a scene, ruining her son's wedding, that this was unacceptable. Jonathan tried to intervene, said his mother should go back to the reception, that he'd handle it. She ignored him, turned to the guard and told him to escort Marcus off the property immediately. The guard reached for Marcus's arm. I stepped between them. Said if he touched Marcus, I'd press charges for assault. My voice was shaking but clear. The police arrived then. 2 officers, a man and a woman, walking across the lawn in uniform. The crowd parted for them. I'd never been so aware of being watched in my life. Everyone I knew, everyone Jonathan knew, all of these wealthy, powerful people, all staring at us. The female officer asked what was going on. I explained the situation. The guard gave his version. Mrs. Ashford interjected, said this was a private event, that they had every right to refuse entry to uninvited guests. I showed the officer my phone, pulled up the email confirmation of my RSVP that clearly stated +1, even though I'd left the name blank. The officer looked at Mrs. Ashford, said that according to the invitation, I was entitled to bring a guest, that unless there was some specific reason Marcus posed a security threat, there was no legal basis for removing him. Mrs. Ashford's face went red. She started to argue. The officer cut her off, politely but firmly, said this was a civil matter, that if the family wanted to pursue it, they could do so through proper channels. But right now, there was no crime being committed. She turned to me and Marcus, asked if we wanted to stay or leave. I looked at Marcus. His jaw was tight, his eyes bright with unshed tears. He'd been quiet through all of this, letting me fight this battle, but I could see the cost. The humiliation of being treated this way, of being the cause of this scene. I asked him what he wanted. He said he wanted to stay, that we'd come this far, that he wasn't going to let anyone make him feel ashamed. The officer nodded, said we were free to remain at the event, told the guard to stand down, told Mrs. Ashford that if there were any further issues, she should call the precinct directly. Then she and her partner left, walking back across the lawn to their patrol car. The silence after they left was deafening. 300 people staring at us. Mrs. Ashford looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Finally, she turned and walked away, her dress swishing behind her. The guard followed, looking relieved to escape. Jonathan stood there, still in his tuxedo, his boutonniere slightly crooked. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he smiled, not a big smile, but genuine. He stepped forward, extended his hand to Marcus, said he was sorry for the confusion, that Marcus was welcome, that any friend of mine was a friend of his. Marcus shook his hand, said congratulations on the marriage. Jonathan thanked him, then turned to me, asked if I was okay. I nodded, though I was shaking. He pulled me into a hug, whispered in my ear that he was glad I'd brought Marcus, that he wished I'd felt comfortable telling him sooner. When he pulled back, Catherine was there. She hugged me too, said the same thing, said they'd make sure we had seats together at dinner, that we should enjoy the reception. The crowd started to disperse. Some people came up to congratulate Jonathan and Catherine, shooting curious glances at Marcus and me. Others avoided us entirely. I heard whispers, saw heads bent together in conversation, but I didn't care anymore. I was done hiding. Marcus and I walked to the bar. I ordered 2 whiskeys, neat. My hands were still shaking when I picked up the glass. Marcus touched my back, a gentle pressure, asked if I was all right. I said I would be. Said I was sorry he'd had to go through that. He said I had nothing to apologize for, that what I'd done, standing up, calling the police, refusing to back down, that meant everything. We found our seats at dinner. Someone had hastily added a place card for Marcus, his name written in different handwriting than the calligraphy on the others. We sat through the meal, through the toasts. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up with my glass and looked at Jonathan and Catherine. I gave the speech I'd prepared, about friendship and love and finding the person who makes you better. But I added something at the end. Said that Jonathan had always accepted me for who I was, even when I didn't fully know myself. That real friendship meant creating space for people to grow, to change, to become who they're meant to be. That I was grateful to stand beside him on this day, and grateful to have someone standing beside me. I looked at Marcus when I said it. He was crying, not hiding it. When I sat down, he took my hand on top of the table, in full view of everyone. We stayed like that through the rest of the reception. People's reactions were mixed. Some of Jonathan's relatives left early, tight-lipped and disapproving. Some of our college friends came up to us, said they were happy for me, asked how long we'd been together. A few people I'd known for years avoided me entirely, but Jonathan and Catherine made a point of including us, of introducing Marcus to people, of treating us like any other couple. When the dancing started, Marcus asked if I wanted to dance. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, because I was scared. Scared of being the spectacle, of giving people more to talk about. But then I thought about everything that had already happened, about the line we'd already crossed. And I thought about Marcus, who'd been patient and kind and brave enough to show up here in the first place. I said yes. We danced, slowly, carefully, while people watched. Some smiled, some looked away, some stared with open hostility. But we kept dancing, and gradually other couples joined us on the floor, until we were just two people among many, swaying to music under string lights. Later, when we were leaving, Jonathan walked us to our car. He apologized again for his mother, said she'd been raised in a different time, that she'd come around eventually. I said it was okay, that I understood. He said he was proud of me. That took courage, what I'd done. I said I should have done it sooner. He asked if I was happy. I looked at Marcus, who was waiting by the car, giving us space to talk. Said I was. Happier than I'd ever been. Scared, yes. Uncertain about what came next. But happy. Jonathan hugged me again. Said he'd call me next week. That we'd get lunch. That nothing between us had changed. I believed him. Marcus drove us back to the city. We didn't talk much. Just held hands across the center console. Processed what had happened. When we got to his apartment, we sat on his couch in the dark, exhausted. He said he was proud of me. That he knew how hard that must have been. I said I was proud of us. That we'd faced it together. That I didn't want to hide anymore. He kissed me then, soft and slow. Said he loved me. I said it back. First time I'd said it out loud. It felt right. The next few weeks were hard. I had to tell my parents. That conversation was painful. Tears, confusion, questions I didn't have perfect answers for. My father was silent. My mother kept asking if I was sure, if this was just a phase, if I'd thought about what this meant for my future. I said I was sure, that this was who I'd always been. I just hadn't known it. That Marcus made me happy in a way I'd never experienced. They didn't understand, not right away, but they didn't cut me off. They asked to meet Marcus. We had dinner at their house in Connecticut, awkward and stilted, but they tried. My mother cried. My father asked Marcus about his military service. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. My sister was easier. She hugged me, said she'd wondered, said she just wanted me to be happy. Her kids didn't care at all. They just wanted to know if Marcus could teach them how to do push-ups. Work was complicated. Some colleagues were supportive. Some were coldly professional. I didn't get promoted that year, though I'd been up for it. I don't know if that was related. I chose not to ask, but Jonathan kept his word. We still had lunch once a month. He and Catherine invited us to dinner parties, introduced us to their friends as a couple. His mother never apologized, but she was civil when we saw her. That was enough. The story of what happened at the wedding spread. Some people thought I'd been brave. Some thought I'd been inappropriate, attention-seeking, that I'd ruined Jonathan's day. I stopped caring what people thought, or at least I tried to. What I learned was that coming out isn't a single moment. It's 1,000 small moments. Every time you introduce your partner, every time you correct someone's assumption, every time you hold hands in public and feel eyes on you, every time you have to decide whether to be visible or invisible. And I learned that the closet isn't always about shame. Sometimes it's about fear. Fear of losing people you love. Fear of judgment. Fear of becoming someone different than who you've always been. But staying in that closet means asking the person you love to be invisible, And that's not fair. That's not love. Marcus and I have been together for a year and a half now. We moved in together 6 months ago. His daughter Sophie stays with us every other weekend. She calls me her dad's boyfriend, introduces me to her friends without hesitation. Kids are better at this than adults. I'm still figuring out what it means to be a gay man at 35. Still learning the language, the culture, the history I missed by not knowing this about myself earlier. Marcus is patient. He reminds me there's no right way to do this, no timeline I'm supposed to follow. Sometimes I think about that night at the wedding, about standing on that lawn with everyone watching, about calling the police on one of the wealthiest families in New York, about refusing to let Marcus be thrown out, about dancing with him while people stared. And I don't regret it, not for a second, because that was the night I chose truth over comfort, the night I stopped performing a version of myself that wasn't real, the night I stood up for the person I love and for the person I'm becoming. I think about all the years I spent not knowing, not questioning, not recognizing what was missing, and I wonder how many other people are out there, living half lives, telling themselves they're fine, that what they have is enough. I want to tell them it's okay to question. It's okay to discover something new about yourself at 30, at 40, at 50. It's okay to be scared and do it anyway. My truth set me free. Not in some dramatic movie moment way, but in small, daily ways. In being able to wake up next to Marcus without guilt. In introducing him as my boyfriend without hesitation. In building a life that's actually mine, not one I inherited or assumed I was supposed to want. If this story touched you, if you recognize something in it, you're not alone. Maybe you're questioning. Maybe you're scared. Maybe you've never told anyone how you really feel. That's okay. Take your time. But know that on the other side of that fear is a kind of peace you can't imagine until you experience it. If you want to hear more stories like mine, stories about real people figuring out who they are, subscribe. And if you want, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Or just write, "My truth set me free." Because maybe you need to hear that you're not alone. Maybe I need to hear it too. We're all just trying to find our way to something real, something true. And that's worth fighting for.